very good meetings yesterday with the European political community, and we had also the occasion yesterday evening to have a working dinner. Before I say a few words about those meetings, I would like to start by strongly condemning those terrible attacks against Israeli people. I would like to express my solidarity with the victims. Anti-Semitism is not acceptable, and we are absolutely committed to fighting this attack against our fundamental values and principles. Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday evening we had the occasion to have the exchange of views on the transatlantic alliance and the relationship with the United States following the elections of Donald Trump. It was the occasion to congratulate him. We had the occasion to talk, some of us, with him yesterday or in the recent days. We are ready to strengthen the transatlantic ties. We are ready to cooperate, to coordinate in various fields with the United States. And I see three important elements for this coordination and this cooperation. First one, the bilateral relations, trade, investment. This is a challenge. We want to strengthen our economic base, and I'm confident that we'll have the occasion to work hard in that field. Second topic, security and geopolitical challenges. Ukraine, the Middle East, it requires more dialogue, it requires more efforts to make sure that we defend our common interests. And for instance, yesterday, in this phone call with Donald Trump, we had the occasion to discuss Ukraine and the Middle East, and I'm absolutely convinced that in the days to come, in the weeks to come, we'll continue to work with the United States and to identify how we can defend our common values and principles. You know our positions. Many times in the European Council we have had the occasion to affirm our support in various fields for Ukraine, and I'm absolutely convinced on my side that supporting Ukraine, this is also a way to defend our values, but also a way to send a signal to the rest of the world that the international rules-based order is essential, and that we want to defend the UN Charter and the principle of sovereignty and territorial integrity, because if not, this is making all of us more vulnerable, and this is making the world at risk. Point three, the global challenges. Climate change, digital, we can see that there is a transformation of the economic paradigm, and it means that we have to work on those topics with partners all across the world. And then, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say that one thing was clear yesterday at the level of the leaders. All of us, we agree that the challenges we faced yesterday are not different today. These are the same challenges. And all of us will agree that we have started many months ago. It started in Versailles, followed by Grenada in Spain, and under the Belgian presidency in April, with again the occasion to identify our common challenges. In June, before the summer, we have agreed on what we call our strategic agenda. In fact, this is the plan, the EU plan, to address those common challenges. And here we see a few priorities. The first one is competitiveness. And today, this morning, we had the occasion to have an exchange of views with Mario Draghi and with Christine Lagarde. Nous avons eu l'occasion ce matin d'avoir un échange de vues sur la compétitivité. Je voudrais résumer le propos en disant qu'il y a un très grand consensus au sein du Conseil européen pour considérer qu'il y a une priorité absolue, c'est réduire la fragmentation et renforcer l'intégration, principalement sur deux sujets. Le marché intérieur. On doit approfondir le marché intérieur. Mario Draghi a parfaitement montré que, par exemple, le secteur des technologies digitales a besoin d'un approfondissement du marché intérieur dans le domaine des services. C'est un point extrêmement important. Et puis il y a un deuxième sujet, c'est le marché des capitaux. Ça fait de très nombreuses années que l'on sait ce qu'il faut faire pour réduire les fragmentations et être plus attractif, pour faciliter la capacité de nos entreprises à avoir des capitaux qui peuvent permettre d'innover, d'investir dans l'avenir. Et je pense que la conversation ce matin a bien montré le sens de l'urgence sur ces sujets, approfondir le marché intérieur, progresser sur le marché des capitaux, mettre en place l'union de l'épargne et des investissements. Cette proposition du rapport l'État, on va continuer à travailler sur ces sujets. Et puis, il y a un autre point que je voudrais aborder brièvement, mais qui est essentiel, bien sûr, c'est la question des moyens moyens financiers. Et je pense que la déclaration de Budapest identifie bien les jalons au départ desquels on va continuer à travailler dans ce domaine-là. D'une part, we have decided to explore new instruments, and you know what it means. It means that today there is no spontaneous consensus on the topic, but the debate is on the table, and I'm absolutely confident that in the months to come, and probably in preparation of the next multi-annual framework, it will be the task in the framework of the new institutional cycle, this debate will take place. The use of the European Investment Bank, which I think could be a powerful tool to invest more, to support more innovation. Capital Markets Union I've already mentioned, and the own resources and the need to work further on the own resource. Finally, one word about defense and security. And I remember 5 years ago, some of us, when we started to talk about European sovereignty, strategic autonomy, maybe it was not the mainstream across the EU. But today I can see that there is more and more support for the idea that we have to strengthen the European defense readiness and that we have to strengthen our defense capabilities. And it means that we need to cooperate much more. NATO is a fundamental pillar, there is no doubt, but there is a European responsibility in that field, and it's also the occasion to discuss how we can reinforce the industrial basis in that field, because if we want to be credible in the field of the European defense in the future, we have also to support more developments in the field of our industrial base in that field. Finalement, un dernier mot pour indiquer que l'unité, la confiance, ce sont les ingrédients magiques pour relever les défis. Alors, l'unité et la confiance, c'est rarement spontané. Ça demande des efforts, d'écoute mutuelle, ça demande des efforts pour accepter de comprendre l'argumentation de l'autre quand il n'est pas d'accord avec soi-même. Je pense encore une fois que ce soit dans cette réunion de la communauté politique européenne ou au sein du Conseil européen, il y a eu cette capacité ici en Hongrie, à Budapest, de s'écouter, de se respecter et de tracer le chemin pour plus de confiance afin qu'on puisse agir pour une Europe plus forte, plus résiliente et plus souveraine. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Thank you, President. Thank you, President. Madam President, President of the European Commission, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Let me also start by saying that I'm outraged by last night's vile attacks targeting Israeli citizens in Amsterdam. This morning, we have been informed by Prime Minister Skov to get a full overview over the situation. I strongly condemn these unacceptable acts. Anti-Semitism has absolutely no place in Europe, and we are determined to fight it and to fight all forms of hatred. We want Jewish life and culture to thrive in Europe. Let me turn to the meeting here we had today of the informal meeting of the European Council. And first of all, I want to thank you, Prime Minister Orban, dear Viktor, for the outstanding hospitality and organization of this informal European Council. Budapest is well known for its history, but also for its hospitality. And indeed, I can confirm it is a famous hospitality that we're lucky to experience here, so thank you very much for that. And then, dear Charles, I also wanted to thank you. Today is your last European Council. And I want to thank you for all your work and dedication over the last 5 years, for your commitment to making the European project moving forward, despite the many, many crises and the heavy storms we went through together when we think of the pandemic and, for example, the Russian war in Ukraine, but many other difficult topics that have had to be solved. Dear Charles, today we're stronger than we were 5 years ago, and this is also your success. So thank you very much for these 5 years. Last night at dinner, we discussed the results of the elections in the United States. The United States is our biggest economic and trading partner. We share a unique historical bond, and our citizens share millions of friendships across the Atlantic. So it is important to build good relations with the new administration from the very beginning on. And this is how we will continue to shape the positive transatlantic agenda. I had the opportunity yesterday afternoon to congratulate Donald J. Trump on the phone early on. We discussed, among others, the topic of Ukraine and defense, trade and energy, and it was a brief discussion about these topics, and of course I'm looking forward to develop these topics together. Today, our main issue was Europe's competitiveness. And we first of all mapped our strengths. For example, that we compared with our main competitors have the longest life expectancy. We have an excellent education system that does not rely on the income of the parents. We have the lowest inequality between incomes, so a lot of social security. We have the biggest reduction of CO2 emissions, but we also know that we have areas where we have to improve our performance. And the basis of our discussion was and is the invaluable work of Mario Draghi. It is a year ago now that I asked him whether he could produce such a report looking at the competitiveness of the European Union. It was in preparation for the next cycle of the Commission. It was very well received, as you've seen over the last weeks and months since publication. And there is a broad consensus that this is the basis to discuss on and to move forward. What has increased is the urgency to deliver on the topics that are in this report. And it is absolutely impossible to describe it in full shape here, but let me give you a slight flashlight on three priorities. First, very clear from this report, we must close the innovation gap that we have with our global peers. Above all else, it's about diffusing digital innovation throughout our economy. We are very good in groundbreaking research, outstanding, but there is a deficiency in bringing the research results into a product and scale up the product on the market in the European Union. So there are still a lot of barriers to innovation and innovative startups that we see and that the report sees. So first priority must be to take down these barriers with simplification and speeding up. And as a first step, to cut red tape for these startups. We have already started to do that, but we want to go further. What the startups tell us, the innovative startups, they tell us that it is for them very cumbersome to go to the single market because they often face 27 different regulations they have to deal with. So we want to propose a 28th regime which says that for these innovative startups, a single rule book, a simple and single rule book for the whole of the European Union is accessible. It's voluntary. We have around 182,000 innovative SMEs. So this will give them access to the whole single market and give them the possibility to scale up. The goal is indeed to use the full single market to scale up. There are many more tracks that we have to work on the single market. I will not go in depth now, but I just want to say that the letter report is very helpful here also as a roadmap for the way forward. The Commission will present in June its strategy drawing on this report, and we will look at a better enforcement of the rules. We want to facilitate, most and importantly, cross-border trade, innovation and investment. Speaking of investment, as Mario Draghi pointed out, we need more investment, specifically more private capital. It is essential to ramp up also the private capital's investment in research and development. So we will work on a European savings and investments union because lots of the savings, it was very impressive today to listen to Christine Lagarde, lots of the savings are not taken forward for valuable investments, but in the bank or in cash. So they could, if there is a more conducive environment for these investments, go to a deep and liquid capital market and leverage the wealth of these private savings. One other task to look at for not only closing the innovation gap, but also for the second priority, and that is to have a joint plan for competitiveness, decarbonization and digitalization. We have shown in the past that we can reduce our emissions while growing our economy, but we know that we have challenges to overcome. So in the first 100 days of the new mandate, we will propose a clean industrial deal. It will build on Mario Draghi's report and on the 10 different sector dialogues we have led in the past month to ask the industry, with a commitment to 2050 climate neutrality, what is it what you need to get to this goal? How can we support you in getting there? And the sum of it will be in the clean industrial deal. One major topic in it will be energy. Energy was a big topic today in the discussion too. We know that it was a huge challenge to overcome the energy crisis unleashed by Russia's war in Ukraine, but the energy prices are still structurally too high. They have to go down, and this is one of the tasks for the new Commission ahead of us. We discussed the topics grid and interconnectors and storage. Simpler, faster permitting for renewables will be essential here. The third and last priority I want to shed a light on is reinforcing our strategic security. We know that over-dependencies can quickly turn into vulnerabilities. And this is why stable and secure supply chains are needed to power the future of our economy. You all know the topic of critical raw materials. We know that by 2030, for example, at the end of this mandate, demand for some minerals will rise exponentially. So we need action now and coordination at EU level to secure this access. There are two ways to do this. One way is to diversify, so to have a trading partnership with other regions of the world so that we're not depending on one single supplier, but we have a diversified chain of supply of critical raw materials. The second is even more interesting, and that is the whole topic of the circular economy. If you recycle, you do not need to get new critical raw materials. And if you look at the latest development in the startups for recycling, it's fascinating to see how much they can take out of a product that would go to waste normally and take out, again, these critical raw materials or other valuable resources and put them into the new cycle of production again. So a way forward to follow up. I will stop here. It was a very fruitful discussion about the Draghi report and the roadmap forward, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Madam President. The Prime Minister of Hungary, Mr. Orban, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. May I speak Hungarian, I suppose so. Tisztelettel köszöntöm Önöket. Örülök, hogy elfogadták a meghívásunkat. Mindenek előtt magam is szeretném Magyarország nevében elítélni az antiszemita zavargásokat, amelyek Amsterdamban történtek. Ez számunkra, magyarok számára is elfogadhatatlan. Önök most egy olyan városban vannak, ezt a külföldieknek mondom, ahol Európa talán legnagyobb zsinagógája, és a város legnagyobb katolikus katedrálisa egymástól lényegében egy kőhajításnyira van. És ez a közelség egyben szimbolizálja is a mi városunkat. Ez egy találkozóhely, különböző kultúrák találkozóhelye, kelet, nyugat, észak, dél, és ettől olyan különlegesen toleráns. Ezért élünk itt Budapesten békében és biztonságban együtt, és azt kívánom az amsterdamiaknak, hogy ez nekik is sikerüljön. Önök is tudják, hogy egy informális ülést tartott az Európai Tanács Budapesten. Magyarország volt már elnöke, soros elnöke az Európai Uniónak. 11 évvel ezelőtt, de akkor nem volt informális csúcstalálkozó Budapesten, ezért az első ilyen alkalom. Megtiszteltetés számunkra, hogy az Unió vezetőit is vendégül láthattuk. Csak hogy fölöslegesen ne kérdezzenek, ezért előre szeretném leszögezni, hogy mindannyiuk előtt közismert, hogy vannak az Európai Unió Bizottsága és Magyarország között súlyos politikai konfliktusok. Nekem is vannak vitáim az elnök asszonnyal, de most von der Leyen a vendégünk. Meghívtuk őt, és elfogadta a meghívásunkat, eljött a házunkba, és a vendégnek kijár az udvarias fogadtatás és a tisztelet. Ezért nem volt semmilyen éles vita, sőt semmilyen vita sem volt közöttünk a tanácsülésen. A csatáinkat majd megvívjuk Brüsszelben. Ráadásul az itteni fő témában, ez a versenyképesség volt, teljes egyetértés volt közöttünk. Az elnökség azt tűzte ki célul, a magyar elnökség azt tűzte ki célul, hogy a versenyképességre összpontosítjuk az összes erőnket. És az volt a terv, hogy létrehozunk egy versenyképességi paktumot, egy megállapodást, egy budapesti deklarációt, és hosszú hónapok munkájával ezt sikerült elérni. Szeretnék köszönetet mondani a saját munkatársaimnak, a bizottság elnökének és az ő munkatársainak, a Charles Michel barátomnak és az ő munkatársainak, és a jelentés készítő Mario Draghi elnök úrnak is. Nagyon sok ember munkája kellett ahhoz, hogy el tudjunk fogadni egy közös dokumentumot, amely a következő 5 évre a munkák középpontjába állítja a versenyképességet. A tények ismertek. Az Európai Unió növekedése az elmúlt 2 évtizedben tartósan lassabb volt, mint Kínáé vagy az Egyesült Államoké. A termelékenység itt nálunk Európában lassabban növekszik, mint a versenytársainknál. Az Európai Unió részesedése a világkereskedelemből csökken, és az Európai Unió vállalatai 3-szor magasabb villamos energiaárat fizetnek, mint a versenytársaik az Egyesült Államokban, földgáz esetében, földgáz árak esetében ez pedig 4-szeres. Semmi túlzás nincs abban, hogy a budapesti deklaráció azt mondja, hogy azonnali cselekvésre van szükség. Ennek a deklarációnak most néhány fontos pontját ismertetem önökkel. Először is elhatároztuk, hogy végrehajtunk egy egyszerűsítési forradalmat. Lecsökkentve az adminisztrációs terheket, első lépésként 2025 első félévének végére drasztikusan le fogjuk csökkenteni a jelentési kötelezettségek számát, amelyek nagy terhet rónak az európai cégekre. Elhatároztuk, hogy sürgős intézkedéseket fogadunk el a magas energiaárak mérséklése érdekében. Elhatároztuk, hogy egy valódi iparpolitikát is meg fogunk fogalmazni a következő időszakban. Mindannyian egyetértettünk és megfogadtuk, megerősítettük, hogy 2030-ra az európai össztermék GDP 3%-át kutatásfejlesztésre fogjuk fordítani. Elhatároztuk, hogy tőkepiaci uniót teljes egészében megvalósítjuk. Elnök asszony is arról beszélt, hogy az európai emberek megtakarítása, annak az összege, az magasabb, mint az amerikaiak megtakarítása, de az európaiak a pénzüket a bankokban tartják. A bankok pedig genetikailag nem alkalmasak arra, hogy a különböző kockázatos high-tech befektetéseket finanszírozzák. Ezért nekünk a bankbetéteket át kell vinnünk pénzügyi alapokba, meg kellene győzni a polgárainkat, hogy tegyék ezt, annak érdekében, hogy azok a pénzek könnyebben legyenek felhasználhatók innovatív gazdasági megoldásokra. Ennek érdekében teszünk majd lépéseket. Eldöntöttük, hogy egy európai védelmi ipari bázist hozunk létre. Megállapodtunk abban, hogy a következő 5 évben a versenyképesség lesz a középpontban. Abban is megállapodtunk, hogy minden új jogalkotási javaslathoz kell készíteni egy értékelést, ezt úgy hívjuk, hogy versenyképességi tesztet, hogy minden új jogszabályról lássuk, hogy a versenyképességre annak milyen hatása van. A bizottság elnökasszonya egyetértett a tanács tagjaival, hogy az Európai Tanács ülésein rendszeresen vissza fogunk térni a versenyképesség kérdésére. Én optimista vagyok a mai tanácskozás végén. Úgy éreztem, hogy senki nem a hanyatlást akarja menedzselni, hanem mindannyian újra nagyjá akarjuk tenni Európát, ha már az amerikaiak úgy döntöttek, hogy ők nagyjá teszik Amerikát. Erre egyetlen lehetséges európai válasz van, mi pedig Európát fogjuk nagyjá tenni. Köszönöm szépen a figyelmüket.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll open the floor for questions, and we start with the Ratip.
Thank you. Razia Akoch, AFP News Agency. My first question will go to the European Commission President and the European Council Chief. I'm going to very quickly just mention that the conclusions of a European Council in Lisbon in March 2000 said the Union today has today set itself a new strategic goal for the next decade to become the most competitive and dynamic knowledge-based economy in the world. The same conclusions mention enhancing innovation, creating a friendly environment, removing unnecessary red tape. Why should Europeans believe that things will be different this time round? What was wrong then that is right now? And my question for European Commission President and for the host Prime Minister Orban, if he'd also like to comment on this. So Trump is returning. Is Europe ready for whatever trade measures, even trade war, that he might unleash this time round? Thank you.
So, should I start? Okay. First of all, we should not underestimate that since the dates you were mentioning, I'm speaking about competitiveness now, since the dates you were mentioning, enormous involvement, industrial research and development involvement has taken place. So it's not the same status as then. So today what we are doing, we're looking at the facts. How, for example, is our performance in different sectors? How is our performance in different measures? We see that we are good in, we have our strength. I was mentioning it at the beginning. And we also have, for example, in innovation, a remarkable talent in Europe. For example, with the whole clean tech sector, we are world leading, so we have our strength. But I think it is also a question of clarity that we have to be sincere in describing our weaknesses, where we have to work and to improve things. For example, if you're speaking about red tape, how could you convince people that this time it's different? Measure us at our words. We will, for example, come with a so-called omnibus. Omnibus is you take from many different files topics to reduce bureaucracy, to reduce reporting burdens, and put them in one omnibus that you guide them, propose as a Commission and guide them through the Parliament and the Council. So you have a huge approach to reduce in one step in all the different fields what is agreed is too much today. We will look, for example, at the triangle taxonomy, CSRD, CSDDD. And important is, and this is something we agreed also in the informal council here today, the content of the laws is good. We want to maintain it and we will maintain it. But the way we get there, the questions we are asking, the data points we are collecting, thousands of them, is too much, often redundant, often overlapping. So it's our task to reduce this bureaucratic burden without changing the correct content of the law that we all want. The second question was, Victor, it was something with the two of us and I forgot the content.
How to negotiate with Trump on trade. Sorry.
Yes. So I think, first of all, engage. Very important, what we have started yesterday. Secondly, discuss about common interests, and there are common interests that we have. So, and then go into negotiations. Common interests are, for example, this is one topic that we touched upon. I would not say discussed, but we touched upon yesterday. It's the whole topic of LNG. We still get a lot of LNG via Russia, from Russia. And why not replace it by American LNG, which is cheaper for us and brings down our energy prices, but is something where we can get into a discussion, also what our trade deficit is concerned. So engage, look at common interest, and then negotiate.
Moi, je voudrais ajouter deux choses. D'abord, sur le premier point, effectivement, je pense que les messages qui ont été donnés hier, c'est un souhait d'engagement. Et c'est aussi le message que Donald Trump nous a adressé. C'est un souhait d'engagement avec l'Union européenne. C'est un premier point. Et puis, la première question sur la compétitivité, qu'est-ce qui est différent en quelques instants simplement, pour dire que le monde, depuis 5 ans, a beaucoup changé. Et l'Union européenne a beaucoup changé également depuis 5 ans. Lorsque Jacques Delors a eu cette brillante idée de lancer le marché intérieur, délibérément à l'époque, on avait exclu du marché intérieur les télécoms, c'est-à-dire toute la dimension digitale, les marchés financiers et les questions énergétiques. Et ce qui me frappe, c'est d'observer que ces 2-3 dernières années, dans la dynamique du Conseil européen, il y a beaucoup plus de convergence politique sur la réponse à la question « Que veut-on faire ensemble pour renforcer notre base économique ?» Il y a maintenant un consensus assez large sur l'idée que l'énergie, même si sur base des traités c'est une compétence nationale, on doit davantage agir ensemble pour avoir un impact à la baisse sur les prix de l'énergie, pour avoir un impact sur les interconnexions et pour considérer que l'énergie est un instrument de souveraineté et un instrument de sécurité stratégique. La même chose, je n'y reviens pas, pour les marchés financiers qui sont un levier pour mobiliser l'épargne des Européens vers l'innovation, vers les investissements, et la même chose sur le télécom, l'intelligence artificielle et les questions digitales. En un mot, je dirais que ce qui domine au Conseil européen, et ça c'est peut-être la différence avec des rencontres précédentes d'il y a quelques années, c'est l'idée que l'on doit changer le paradigme et qu'on doit instaurer un principe de confiance. Confiance dans les entrepreneurs, confiance dans les investisseurs. Et donc certainement dans le passé, avec de bonnes intentions, on demandait beaucoup de rapports, de lourdeur administrative. On pense qu'il faut inverser le raisonnement et aller vers davantage de confiance pour libérer les capacités de développement économique, libérer la compétitivité de nos entreprises. Et c'est un enjeu qui est effectivement central parce que, comme Viktor Orban l'a bien montré en mentionnant quelques exemples, les chiffres montrent que l'on accumule du retard par rapport à nos partenaires et compétiteurs. C'est maintenant qu'il faut agir. Le rapport Letta, le rapport Draghi sont des messages. Il est minuit moins 1 et c'est maintenant que l'on doit agir.
Mint egy veterán szeretnék kapcsolódni azon. As a veteran, may I just join to your statement about the targets we have set up in Lisbon? So it was more wide range that you have just mentioned here, because to be the most competitive area of the world was just the #1 target. But there were 2 others, just to help you to commemorate. To make Eurozone, to make Euro as a worldwide currency, and then that we create a biggest ever market from Lisbon to Vladivostok. So now time has changed. So these targets are not realistic anymore. So what can we do to set up new goals? And the answer to your question, what is the guarantee that these goals will be achieved, unlike the previous one? The answer is it depends on the leaders. It's a leadership issue. So if the leaders are good, they can achieve their goals. If the leaders are weak, they fail. So look at the Hungarian presidency. The reason why I'm very much optimistic, look at the Hungarian presidency. Everybody said that, oh, we are isolated, Hungary is not loved, at least not liked. Sooner or later it will be a failure, it cannot be successful. Even the Budapest meeting will not happen because the leaders will not come. Or, you know the story. And what is the end of the story? The end of the story is that we are here. We cooperated very well. We had a fantastic summit, and we accepted a pact on competitiveness, which everybody said it's impossible to put together. We did so. So leadership issue. So we trust each other. As good leaders, we are able to achieve all the goals we just have set up on competitiveness just now. So the answer is self-confidence. The same goes to negotiation with the President of the United States. It will be not easy. It will be a tough negotiation, because obvious that he will come up with trade ideas, surely serving the interest of the United States more than the European interest. We have to stand up, and we have to negotiate, and at the end of the day, we have to make a deal. The question is how good we are, how strong we are, how innovative we are. If we are good enough, we will make a good deal. And I hope so we will.
Take a question from the Hungarian colleague, Laszlo.
Jó napot kívánok, Mészáros László vagyok a Magyar Televíziótól. Orbán Viktor miniszterelnök úrtól kérdezném, hogy látja, mennyi időn belül lehetnek érezhető hatásai annak a cselekvési tervnek, amelyet most elfogadtak. Magyarország miként tudja kivenni ebből a cselekvési tervből a részét? Illetve annyit kérdeznék még öntől, hogy a két komoly diplomáciai találkozó után mik a magyar elnökség további tervei? Köszönöm.
Csak röviden, a magyar elnökség még nem ért véget. Ez egy jó kis összejövetel volt, szép eredményekkel. Van még néhány meglepetés a tarsolyomban, de most nem azért jöttünk össze, hogy ezekről beszéljünk. Még van előttünk 2 hónap. Remélem érünk majd meg el komoly eredményeket. Az első kérdéséről, hogy mennyi idő kell, hogy önök is érezzék, hogy amit itt elhatároztunk, az eredményre vezetett. Erre az én válaszom az, hogy 6 hónap. Tehát 2025. július 1-én nekünk itt kell állnunk, vagy valahol állnunk kell, és azt kell mondani, kitűztünk célokat, ezekből van, amit teljesen megvalósítottunk, és bizonyos célokat pedig időarányosan elértünk. És ezt látni kell, és a cégeknek érezniük kell. Fél év, szerintem nincs több időnk. Emmanuel Macron, a franciák elnöke kicsit optimistább, szerintem van 2 évünk is, szerintem 6 hónapunk van, és lehetséges 6 hónap alatt érzékelhető döntéseket hozni.
Henry.
Thank you so much. Henry Foy, Financial Times. Question to the two presidents. Do you think that the election of Donald Trump and the collapse of the German coalition has made it more likely that the EU will actually develop and implement these new financial instruments that leaders today agreed to only explore? And is pressure increasing on the countries that currently oppose these measures to drop that opposition? And to the Prime Minister, you've talked today about the need for unity in the EU and the need to unify around the competitiveness challenge to form a common European response. That's probably quite a surprise to the other leaders who often hear you talk about national sovereignty and the reason why governments need to be able to tell Brussels not to tell them what to do and ignore this federal approach to things. What's changed? Are you going soft?
You want to
President? President, I think.
Which one?
You.
Okay.
This is the last summit, I think. Take the plunge.
Okay. The question related to this decision that we intend to explore the new resources. What is at stake? In fact, I think that we know what we want to do and what we need to do and how we need to implement some measures to be more competitive and understand the urgency of the situation. But we know that at the youth level, but not only at the youth level, when you are talking about solidarity, financial solidarity, about money, is always difficult. And I would like to be careful, but we had some experience a few years ago with COVID-19. I remember that 2-3 weeks before we made a decision, we disagreed on the best financial tools to address the consequences of COVID-19, but finally we managed to make a decision. This is my first point. And my second point is the following. It's also based on my modest experience within the this group of 27 leaders the last 10 years, I think this is important not to forget that it's solidarity. This is a both approach. On the one hand, it's a question of financial support and financial means that we dedicate to reach some common goals. This is one part of the story. Another part of the story is related to the reforms, the structural reforms, so that the trust is guaranteed on both sides. And I remember that what made the difference a few years ago when we had an agreement on the multilateral framework is this trust. It's because we understood that through the tools that we were putting in place, it was not only a one-side approach. This was an approach based on the idea that solidarity is not only a question of money, it is a question of financial support, financial means, but also a question of what are the domestic reforms we are going to implement so that we guarantee more trust among us.
So I will answer this question independent of singular member states' developments. You were referring to the so-called new financial tools or innovative financial tools, where we agreed in the conclusions to explore them. And I think it was very clear, if I may, one step backwards, we need more private investment, but this is on a different sheet of paper. We need more public investment. If we look at all the needs that are there, starting with security and defense, and going to the topic, for example, of supporting our innovative industries. The approach has to be very clear. We first have to define our priorities, indeed. And if the priority is that for certain military capabilities, we're not able to finance, and it's not smart to finance them individually and fragmented in 27 member states, but that it's much more better to finance them on a European scale, then we can discuss how we finance that. And you know my answer that there are two ways to do this. It is either contributions to the budget or new own resources to the European Commission. And both include, of course, that you raise capital at the capital markets. Very impressive was today Mario Draghi as well as Christine Lagarde, who described, of course, that the use of those innovative tools to improve the productivity in the European Union leads to more fiscal space of our member states, and therefore a gain and not a loss if you move forward like this.
Okay, on the transformation you have just, the question of transformation you have just raised, being federal or national, you know that I'm a national guy. Unfortunately, to be national, it's not an accepted expression, so it's better to say patriot, you know, I'm a patriot. So that's how I look at the European institutions, but I promise not to open up any big arguments between us and Hungary. So
we have that.
I will not do that. But I just would like to underline that it was easy to make an agreement on competitiveness because it's not ideology. It's a very pragmatic thing. So my concept is that the European interest is nothing else, just the sum up of the interest of the all member states. So that's the reason why I was involved into establishment of a new group in the European Parliament called Patriots for Europe. Don't forget, not Patriots against Europe, Patriots for Europe. So we are European guy on national basis. And competitiveness is a good issue to make agreement even with the institutions of the European Union, which stand at this moment on different basis than we would like to see it. But anyway, that's for another occasion.
Lawrence.
Thanks a lot. Lawrence Norman of the Wall Street Journal. First of all, a question for the two presidents. Nice, simple one. Can Europe plug the gap in support for Ukraine if Donald Trump cuts off aid? Can it and will it? And a question for the Prime Minister.
Please.
You are making an argument that the strategy on Ukraine is not there. And I think it's true to say now that there are other leaders who agree with you in a way that wasn't true in the past. They see the situation as difficult. They know Ukraine is not winning. But in June of 2022, months into the war, you were opposing sanctions on Russia. And you were opposing giving weapons to Ukraine. You wanted Russia unpunished and Ukraine vulnerable. How is that a pro-peace position? Isn't it simply a pro-Russia position?
Madam President.
On the first part of your question, we have very carefully shaped the financial support for Ukraine. As you know, the 50 billion euro Ukraine facility that is there, and that we have now, in addition, the G7 loan that will give Ukraine already important relief until 2026. And you know that we have a fair share for every partner in the G7. They all contribute to this $50 billion loan that is given to Ukraine in addition. But what I think is more important that we discuss with our American friends also the fact that Russia is not only a threat to Europe, but a threat to the global security as a whole. Because Russia is not only an autocratic state, it is threatening democracies, but it is also increasingly becoming aligned with others like Iran, North Korea, and together with China, fueling this war. And I think this is an argument where we also have to be very clear with our American friends. We see that technology from China and Iran is used by Russia on the battlefield. This shows that the security of the Indo-Pacific and Europe are interconnected, and so are the European and the United States interests in this cause.
Two quick points on my side. The first point, since the beginning of this full-scale invasion, we have always been following one important principle: nothing about Ukraine without the Ukrainians. And this is still, I think, a very important principle for the future, point one. And point two, and it's not more than my own modest assessment and modest conviction, but I'm absolutely convinced on my side that if we would give the signal to the Kremlin that we are weak, and if we do not understand that strengthening Ukraine is strengthening ourselves, then at the same time we would give the one signal to other regimes across the world that could be tempted to violate the international law. It would mean that we are all vulnerable. That's why I think we have bold arguments, and I repeat that we intend to engage with all our allies, our partners, including, for sure, with the United States, so that we can make the right steps in the weeks and the months to come for a just peace which is based on the principles of the UN Charter, but again, nothing about Ukraine without the Ukrainians.
As I said earlier, that this is not the stage to explain the differences between the Commission, the Council and the Hungarian position on the major issues. And it's obvious that Ukraine is an issue which we have different views, so I would not like to present here again the Hungarian opinion, just because you refer to the history. Just I would like to make some correction if you don't mind. So my position was not expressed in July 2022. My position about this war was expressed first time 2022 March at the first council meeting, and it was exactly the same at that time, which is my opinion today. So there is no change at all. My estimation on the situation was exactly 2 years ago than it is today, and I had some forecast even that time how will we find ourselves, which situation 2 or 3 years later anyway, but this is not a discussion for that. But the Hungarian position is obviously a pro-peace position and a pro-Hungarian position as well. Don't forget that when the Ukrainian war has started, we launched the biggest ever humanitarian aid to Ukraine. So we helped them. But we has no intention to be part of that military conflict, not in the slightest sense. So we remain in the field of humanitarians. Hungary is very tough on migration issue, as you know. But when the war erupted, we immediately opened the border for the Ukrainian refugees and let them to come, and we have them much. Hundreds of thousands arrived and got all the aid and help what they have needed. So I think we did very well with our limits, which stays and keep Hungary on the field of humanitarian cooperation and aid, and don't let the Hungarian to move closer to the war.
We'll take the last question and then we'll wrap up. Susanna.
Susana Fresh, SIC Portugal. Prime Minister Orban here. Actually, a follow-up. You said that you are not isolated, but you also said that you have different views when it comes to Ukraine. So my question is, do you feel isolated when it comes to Ukraine? And yesterday here in the same room, you were in favor of a ceasefire, and half an hour later, President Zelensky said that was not acceptable. So why do you think Ukraine should accept ceasefire, and why do you agree they should lose territory as well? And President Michel, well, do you think that you spoke about unity? Do you think that unity is at risk, especially now that President Donald Trump is back to the White House? And do you think that Antonio Costa will have a much more difficult task maintaining unity? Thank you.
I can start very briefly because I made several times the same point. In fact, unity is never taken for granted. It requires a lot of effort. It requires a lot of trust and mutual understanding and mutual respect. But I think that the European Council, we see the same challenges and we understand what is at stake. We can see that the world is different. We can see more and more pressure on the multilateralism, on the rules-based order. We can see war and conflicts all across the world, but including in our direct neighborhood. And we can see that a fundamental challenge for the future is related to what we have just discussed, competitiveness, so we can manage to strengthen our economic base. And I never forget that the promises of the founding fathers, peace, security and prosperity, this is our compass. And I trust that Antonio Costa, with his experience, and he knows very well all the colleagues, all the 27 countries and sensitivities, I trust that he will play a very strong role to manage to make sure that the European Council will remain the guardian of the European unity. And what we did today, what we have done yesterday, is working together, accepting the fact that on some topics the starting points could be different. But at the end, you have seen that the last 5 years, we have managed systematically to agree on common conclusions. On difficult topics, but systematically, by consensus, we agreed on common conclusions.
Prime Minister.
Yeah, so on isolation, it's a more intellectual than political issue. So just to clarify, some clarification. So if you have an opinion and you are alone, and 26 has a different opinion, it's not isolation. It's a discussion. That's democracy, and that's exactly how the Hungarian democracy was born. I do remember very well a conversation in my family in '88, when we established the anti-communist youth organization here in Hungary to destroy the communist regime and push the Soviet Union and Russian troops home, back out. I do remember '88. So everybody said, guys, you are crazy. Even in my family. It's impossible that in several years, I said it will happen soon anyway, that it could happen. So, you know, I was born in a face wind, politically meaning. So, you know, to be alone with my opinion and then to fight to convince the others to follow my opinion, it's the GNI. It's part of our DNA. So it's never perceived in Hungary as isolation. So when we have an opinion, when Hungary is different, like migration, 2015, Hungary was totally alone with the fence and with the concept that we have to stop the migration flow at the border. You know, we were totally alone, but we were not isolated. We were involved into the discussion. Being isolated means that you are not part of the discussion, but we were always part of the discussion and we remained. And you know, we always fought to convince the others that, look, we have some arguments which should be more considered than you have done up to now. So this is how we understand democracy and how we understand isolation. It's two different things. On what Ukraine should do, that was your other question. It's not my job to answer to that question. Ukraine is a sovereign country. Hungary is a sovereign country. What Ukraine will do, it's exclusively belonging to the Ukrainians. They decided to fight, and they fought heroically anyway. It's their decision to continue or not. So what I'm doing, I try to isolate, if I say in that way, Hungary from the danger of the war and the possible getting worse situation which can have bad impact on Hungary. In July, I went to Kiev and to Moscow as well anyway. I was criticized heavily for that. I would not like to recall all the details. But what I have done in Ukraine, not to convince the Ukrainians to do something, I just tried to explain to the president that, please, my friend, the time is not on your side. And I'm ready to help you to create somehow a ceasefire and then later on a bearable peace. I was rejected because the president said that, Viktor, this is not my point. My point is, as president of Ukraine, that the time is on our side. I said, thank you, President, I can't do more. So what I have done after that, realizing that neither of the warring parties is ready to make a ceasefire, and both of them are convinced that the time is on their side, I continue my efforts to organize a kind of international climate as broad as possible to create a pro-peace climate around the war, and then to influence the warring parties that sooner or later they have to have a ceasefire and then some negotiations, and to restore communication. So that's what I have done. I would never dare to say what should be done to the Ukrainians. Their country, their future, their life, sovereign country. But I am ready to have them as many times as I did, because the neighboring country fought heroically and they deserve a better future than as it looked like just now. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We will wrap up here at the press conference and would invite the President and the Prime Minister for a joint photo for the press.
Thank you very much.
Good. So, can we stand?